Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Maybe you're not even working this week. In that case, I hope your off week is off to a good start. We're presented by Gulf Coast Office Products. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. And fired up, you're here with us here on this Monday. Short work week for a lot of folks. That includes us. We'll just be here Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then we'll duck out for a couple days for the Thanksgiving holiday. Back in action, though, for LSU and Oklahoma on Saturday. But get this thing started. We'll have Denton Day coming up here in an hour and a half. Certainly got to talk LSU hoops. An incredibly dramatic win last evening at the Greenbrier. So we'll get into a little bit of that craziness in the Southeastern Conference on the football field. So plenty to do on this Monday as usual. Let's start the same way we start every single day.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. Every car on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. LSU beats Vanderbilt 24-17 in Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. Perfect day of weather on campus. Got a little chilly there in the second half. It was a great day and a great event inside Tiger Stadium. And LSU took care of their business. They just handled themselves the way they needed to handle themselves. And I thought that was a question entering the game. I thought it was reasonable to continue that question when you go 3 and out and then allow a 63-yard touchdown pass on the first play from scrimmage. That's not exactly a great start. And you could have really questioned whether or not LSU had checked out. And in fact, they had not. I thought LSU played a really, really strong football game, essentially from that point to the finish of the game. I thought 2 plays kept this from being great. I thought the 4th down, where LSU decides to go for it inside the 5-yard line, Garrett Nussmeier fires for Trey Green, and it just misses. And then the fake punt that Vanderbilt ended up converting there late in the game. If you take those 2 snaps and change them, it was really a clinical performance by LSU. You can't do that. You had an empty red zone trip because you didn't hit Trey Green, and Vanderbilt went down and scored a late touchdown to cut the lead to 7 because you weren't awake on the fake punt. But outside of those 2, it was really, really good for LSU. Vanderbilt's drives after the first touchdown, which was a 63-yard bomb on a double move that Zy Alexander fell for, was punt, it was a 3 and out, 6 plays, 50 yards, punt, turnover on downs on a 40-yard drive, 4 plays and a punt, a field goal drive that went 46 yards but took 12 plays to do it, and then a 3 and out. So that's 6 consecutive drives that just netted 3 points for Vanderbilt before the last drive of the game that ended up getting them a touchdown. Offensively, LSU was really, really good at sustaining drives, at keeping the football, at running it. Nussmeier was efficient, in rhythm, didn't put the ball in harm's way. You had an 8-play, 90-yard touchdown drive. You had a 12-play, 70-yard drive. That's the one that didn't cash there at the end. But you also had an 80-yard touchdown play that took 9 plays. You had a 77-yard drive that took 10 plays and scored a touchdown. Then you had a 74-yard drive that took 13 plays and was a field goal. And then when you got the ball with 5 minutes and 47 seconds to go, you salted the entire game away with a 66-yard drive that took 11 plays. That's about as good as you can be offensively. So I just thought that LSU did a ton of things very, very well in this game after 5 snaps. You had a 3 and out, and then the bomb, and then you got into it. The running game for LSU, I thought, was exceptional. They just stayed on schedule all night long. Josh Williams ran really physically and really hard. He kind of set the tone for what the night was going to be. On that first drive, he had the 16-yard catch and run where he broke 2 tackles in the right flat. And the next snap, he goes for the 20-yard touchdown run. He had 90 yards on 14 carries, and I thought was really good. He forced some missed tackles and got into the end zone. Caden Durham looked good as well. He didn't necessarily bust a long one, but he still averaged 4 yards a carry and rolled up 58 yards on the ground. And when LSU can run the ball like that, they're good. They have a good offense. It's when the running game gets bogged down and everything is thrust on the passing game that LSU has issues. And that never became the case against a pretty mediocre Vanderbilt defense on Saturday night. They tried to take the running game away, but they just couldn't do it. LSU continued to just hammer the ball away with the ground game, and that made everything easy in the air. Garrett Nussmeier, I thought, was comfortable the entire game. They gave him a really clean pocket to operate from. He completed 76% of his throws, 28 for 37. He threw for 332 yards and a touchdown. He did not turn the ball over, just took the one sack where Vanderbilt got pressure right up there in the A gap between the two redshirt freshmen on the offensive line. But I thought Nussmeier was really, really good. It was interesting, and I was talking about this on the postgame show with Marlon Favorite and Brandon Taylor back on Saturday night. It's like, man, there was a time where at LSU, if I would have showed you a stat line that said a quarterback completed 76% of his throws for 332 yards and a score without an interception, we would have gone, oh my God, that's one of the great performances we've seen from an LSU quarterback. But the standard has shifted so much over the last 5 years that wasn't even really a thought. Like, I got to so many things on the postgame show before we got to Garrett Nussmeier throwing for 332 on 76% completions without an interception. The standard has just kind of changed at LSU, but I thought he was really good. He got a lot of guys involved. Lacey and Anderson both had 6 catches. He checked the ball down very comfortably to Josh Williams and Caden Durham. They combined for 6 catches. C.J. Daniels tossed in his usual 4. Mason Taylor had 3 catches. Chris Hilton got involved. And Trey'Dez Green and Kamorian Pimpton both had a 5-yard reception. In all, 9 receivers touched the football for LSU. And again, they never got any sort of trouble with the interception bug that has bitten them so often. So that was really good from an offensive perspective. Will Campbell, for his work at left tackle, was named SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week earlier today. I looked at the Pro Football Focus grade for him. He was in the top 5 on LSU's team yesterday. When I put that story up at LouisianaSports.net, he did not allow a single pressure in 39 dropbacks, which is really good work by Will Campbell. He's had a couple of PFF grades that weren't as good. Certainly the game against Florida comes to mind, but he was, no, that was not Florida. It was Alabama, where the grade was not very good. But he was really good in the game against Vanderbilt, and he was recognized for that. And defensively, as far as LSU goes, they've never really let Pavia go nuts like he can. He did, get some yardage. He had the one where he snuck out of the pocket and there was nobody there, and he was able to go for 36 yards. But outside of that 36-yard run, he only had 43 yards total. So you're talking about 7 more yards after the one run. So Pavia was never able to do all the things that he wants to do, freelancing and making crazy plays. And Vanderbilt's running game was pretty mediocre. They ran for 122 yards on 24 carries. If you had told me before the game that Vanderbilt's only going to run for 122, they don't have a path to win. And that was the point I continued to make all of last week. Like, Vanderbilt really only has one punch. They run the ball, they stay ahead of the chains, they convert like crazy on third downs, and they stay in a close game and win it late. And LSU completely choked off third downs for Vanderbilt for the entire game. Vanderbilt only converted 2 of 10 third downs. They also had a 4th down that failed. So when you look at those critical downs, Vanderbilt was under 20% in converting those. And when you do that to Vanderbilt, they're not going to be able to hurt you. Otherwise, they're not an explosive team. Outside of the one big play on the first snap of the game, they didn't have any explosive plays. LSU was in position. They slowed down in the running game. They put Vanderbilt behind the sticks into some third and long distances, and Vanderbilt can't manage those. They just can't. And LSU was able to do enough to win the game. I don't know that there was like an outstanding defensive effort to point to. It wasn't like anybody had 3 sacks in the game or made a big play on an interception, a game-changing play. I thought for the most part it was just pretty solid work on defense. The most noteworthy defensive talking point from this game, I guess I should say, was the fact that Devon Keys played a lot of snaps in this game, and they're starting to get him to the field a little bit more. You saw Dominic McKinley play a lot in this game. This is the lowest snap count for Gio Paez since the beginning of the season. Some of those younger guys are getting to the field. It's been a little bit later than I imagined it would. And I thought that you'd see guys like Deshaun Spears and Kylan Jackson out there a little bit more as the calendar kind of went to Halloween. You haven't really seen that. But the linebacker the freshman linebackers have kind of stepped forward and played a little bit. And Devon Keys had 5 tackles in this game, also was credited with a quarterback hurry. So thought that was pretty good. In total, like LSU just needed this game. They needed a game where some things go right. They needed a game that they were comfortably in front of, and I felt like they were. I never thought they were going to lose this game. And they needed a game that they won, and they got all of that done. It was not an issue where the stadium was a big factor. Nobody really came back to their seats after halftime. It was kind of dead in there. It was weird. I noticed the Vanderbilt reporter that I had on the pregame show was tweeting about how it was odd that it was his first Saturday night in Death Valley, the first time he had ever been inside Tiger Stadium, and it was a 1-score game with 5 minutes to go, and there was like nobody left. And that was expected. That's just the way things go. We talk about it all the time. If the weather's good and LSU's good and the opponent's good and national championship expectations are still on the table, then Tiger Stadium's as tough a place as there is in college football. When you start to pick away at some of those variables, and you got a Vanderbilt team that nobody really cares about, and LSU's goals are off the table, the stadium's not going to be incredible, and it was not on Saturday night. But I thought the team played really well from start to finish. I think that's a credit to a lot of the older guys. They did not mail it in, and that's something that we talked about last week. It doesn't happen very often. It does at times, and it certainly didn't with LSU. They were able to play well enough to get a 24-17 win. So is that something you're going to write home about, a 7-point win over Vanderbilt? Probably not. Is that a game we'll talk about for years to come? No. Was it one that LSU desperately needed at this point after a month of the bleeding on the field and the recruiting? Yeah, they needed it, and they got it done on Saturday night. 24-17 was the final. So we'll talk a little bit more about it coming up in 20 minutes. We'll have some sound from Brian Kelly, some of his thoughts on it, and we'll discuss it further. But we're now at that time of year where different sports are starting to take center stage, and LSU basketball yesterday played a wild one. It was as bad as it can be for about 18 minutes, and then it was really good, and then it had to be good for a little extra time in overtimes, and LSU got it done. So we'll talk about the weekend it was at the Greenbrier. That's coming up. This is the Genesis opening drive on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports, evolvept.com. If you've had a surgery or you've had an injury and you need some rehabilitation, you choose where you go. You can have a suggestion, but you can choose your spot, and you need to go to Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. Robbie Bolton and his team are first class. They are fantastic, and they're going to be hands-on. Far too often, physical therapy is just kind of a handout. Here's some sheets. There's some stretches you can do. We'll see how you're feeling next week. That's not going to be the case at Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. They will be hands-on from the time you walk in to the time you leave to make sure you're getting back to being your active self, whether it's a youth athlete in your home, whether it's somebody in their 60s trying to get back out on the golf course. If you're hurt and you're not able to do the things you want to do actively, Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports needs to be your stop. They're on Starring near Highland Road, right there behind Sammy's Grill. You can check them out online as well at evolvept.com. It's Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports, evolvept.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Wild one from the Greenbrier yesterday, LSU in Central Florida, and what I felt was an important game for LSU. I told you on Friday, as they were getting ready to play against a really good Pitt team, I said, like, 2-0 would be phenomenal this weekend. 1-1 would be fine. That's kind of like holding serve. 0-2 would be a real disappointment. And that sounds very obvious, but I really felt that because last year, LSU's performance in November and December was such that it put them in almost an impossible spot when conference play came. They had to be perfect, essentially, in conference play to try to get onto the bubble. Keep in mind, LSU finished ahead of Mississippi State last year in SEC play. LSU was 9-9. Mississippi State was 8-10. Mississippi State made the NCAA tournament and didn't even go to Dayton. They were just in. And LSU was not even on the bubble because LSU was so bad in November and December. Remember, they lost to Nichols, which was the one that everybody remembers, but they were non-competitive at home against Kansas State. They were non-competitive in a game at Texas. They went to Syracuse and got dusted. Like they lost every game they had of any consequence, and they stepped on a landmine against Nichols. So you really gave yourself no chance, and you're trying this year to avoid that. Losing that game to Pitt is not going to hurt LSU at all. That Pitt team is good, and I think they showed it again yesterday against Wisconsin. That's a good Pitt team. They're old. They got good guards. They're going to be an NCAA tournament team, and they're going to be real competitive in the ACC. So losing that game, while I wish it was a little bit tighter, wasn't the end of the world. And losing to Central Florida wouldn't have been the end of the world, but it would have been, one, a wake-up call to like what this team really is, and two, just further damaging your resume. And it looked like, as of about 2 minutes to play in the first half, that LSU was going to do this again. That first half that LSU played up until the 2-minute mark was about as bad a basketball as I have watched LSU play in a long time. And we are not that far removed from a team that went 2-16 in SEC play. It was atrocious in the first half. I mean, they got down 20 points with 2 minutes and 12 seconds to go. They couldn't make a freaking layup. You had guys getting to the rim and just missing point-blank layups. Just awful intensity on the defensive end. I rarely question teams' intensity and effort. I think that's oftentimes lazy. I generally hate the term came out flat because I think it just is a catch-all sometimes when your team just gets beat. But I just didn't think LSU looked awake. It was just awful. They were turning the ball over, lazy passes, missed. It was just terrible. I, in fact, had a tweet typed out that I did not hit send on that said LSU has 51 halves of basketball left to play in the regular season, and I don't think a single one of them will be worse than this. It was awful for 18 minutes. And they kind of woke up there at the end. Reed had a layup, and then Victorious Miller hit a layup, and then he scored, and then he made a three. And that actually cut the lead to 13, which made it look manageable when it was 20 just a minute and a half before that. It turns out that you give up a layup there with 3 seconds to go to stretch it back out to 15. But it was just atrocious in the first half. And in the second half, they found something. And, of course, the biggest sequence in the game was when Sears hit 3 straight threes. That took LSU from down 12 to down 5 over the course of 1:55 seconds. When Sears hit those 3 threes, you felt like LSU really had a chance with 6 minutes to go down 5. And to credit LSU, they did it. And when they needed baskets pretty late in the game, they did a really good job of getting the ball to Jalen Reed for a couple there to cut it down. And then they got stops over the last 2 minutes of the game. After they gave up one layup, Central Florida didn't score for the last 2:27, and LSU was able to get the chest dunk. He's a freak of an athlete. And then Cam Carter made a bucket with 1:09 left, and then got to the foul line with 22 seconds left and cashed those in. So that was, I thought, good for LSU down the stretch to find a way to scrap and claw and to win the second half by 15 points to force overtime was impressive because it didn't look like they were going to get that done. Overtime was weird, and full disclosure here, I'm not going to just blow smoke and fake you out here. I was in Wicked, the movie, when overtimes were going on. I had the stream on my phone, and the stream cut out, so I couldn't watch the end of triple overtime, but I was watching the game cast while Ariana Grande was singing on the screen in front of me. And I was like, oh, great, they're up 7. They won the game. So I didn't watch the last couple of overtimes, but gut check time for LSU, and every time they responded coming out and took the lead in those overtimes. Now, I wish they could hold the lead late when they get it with a couple of possessions to go in an overtime period, but they played well enough to win the game, and it's a gut check win. It doesn't matter that you played 18 terrible minutes. It doesn't matter that it took you 3 overtimes to get it done. They just did enough to get a win that I think is going to be okay. I don't think Central Florida is going to be a dominant team in the Big 12, but it is a Power 5 team, and it is a win away from the Assembly Center, and I think is one that's going to be a nice little piece on the resume. When you look at the box as a whole, Sears and Carter came alive. They were no-shows again on Friday, and when those two guys don't score, LSU's offense is a little bit toothless. Like, you just can't rely on Corey Chest and Curtis Givens and Derek Fountain and Jai Bailey to create a lot of offense. It's going to need to be, more often than not, Sears and Carter. And those guys were not very good on Friday, and you lost the game. Those guys were not very good early in the game against South Alabama, and you fell behind those guys at halftime. They have to run the ship on offense, and for Sears to hit 6 threes was massive in the game. And then Carter got buckets when you absolutely had to have them late in regulation. The other piece to the scoring puzzle here that's starting to emerge, and this is more than just a blip on the radar, this is becoming a trend. Victorious Miller can score, and he can score right now as a freshman. I wasn't sure how big his role was going to be this first season because you look up and Sears and Carter and Bailey have played a ton of basketball and were always going to be your starting guards. I thought Tyrell Ward would be a key piece off the bench as a reserve wing who plays the same position as Miller. And once you start getting that far down the depth chart, it doesn't feel like you're going to see a huge impact. Well, that's wrong. Victorious Miller is going to play because there are some guys in this rotation that can't create their own shot, can't create their own offense. And when those guys are out there, they need somebody to go out there and score. And Miller can absolutely do that. He He can make threes. He can collect himself in the mid-range and knock down jump shots. He got to the rim, had a huge dunk out of a timeout that Matt McMahon drew up that was gorgeous. So he's becoming a scorer for this team, and that's something that they desperately need. On the other end, I didn't know how much Corey Chess was going to play. If you had told me really none, it would not have surprised me at all. But it's evident now that he's got to be in there. And he started this game on Sunday, and he's not going to shoot very much. He was 3 for 4, but he makes a big impact on the game. He pulled down 6 rebounds. He had 3 steals in this game. He blocked a shot. He's filling a role. And unfortunately, Damian Collins may miss some time here. We saw him get hurt on Friday, went up for a dump, jammed his shoulder. I haven't seen a report of how bad it is, but he certainly didn't play on Sunday. He may miss some time. He may miss significant time. That means Corey Chess is going to have to play a lot more, because that's the role that Corey Chess is going to have to play. The shot blocker, the rim protector, the rebound guy, energy player, trash guy, however you want to call it. Like, that's what Damian Collins was doing very well. Corey Chess is going to have to take on that role, and I think he's doing a really good job of it. He fouled out, and he only fouled out with 27 minutes of action, so he's going to have to clean that up a little bit. But that's just kind of part of it, because when you're that active, you're gonna get some fouls called on you. But I'm really pleasantly surprised with the impact that Miller and Chess have had early on. Those guys are going to have to be good. This team still is going to go the way that Jordan Sears and Cam Carter go, because they're the engine that runs this thing. But you've got to have other guys that can step up and do something here or there. And I was really encouraged by those two guys, and really have been for over a week now. So really nice job by LSU to go up there and hold serve. You've now got 2 wins over Big 12 opponents. You beat Kansas State in a true road game. You beat Central Florida in a neutral site game. I think those are going to help you resume-wise. You still got a couple of boxes to check here moving forward. You got Florida State that's coming up in a game that you'd really like to win as well. So there's still opportunity for LSU to do some more of the non-conference before conference play starts up in January. But I thought a game that LSU really needed to get, and it came down to a coin flip when you play multiple overtimes. You're talking about a shot here, a shot there, and LSU was able to get the wins that they needed. And now they can draw back on that comeback, the fact that they were down 15, the fact that they played so poorly in the first half of that game and were able to mount a charge and get back in it and win the game. You can kind of draw on that as you move forward. I thought a really, really encouraging Sunday for LSU after a disappointing Friday up there at the Greenbrier. Beck, I know you watched this one. I think it was a good win for LSU, and one that, quite frankly, they needed to get.
Yeah, a couple of things. We talked about it last week. Jalen Reed needed to be more involved in the offense, especially when Carter and Sears aren't firing on all cylinders, and he did. He had 21 points, so he played well. And another thing I think was good to see is, it wasn't necessarily good to see them play so poorly in the first half, but it was good to see how they were able to respond to that, because that's going to happen. And there's going to be games like this one where Sears and Carter aren't playing well, aren't scoring super well, and maybe in the first half, or maybe it's in the second half, who knows? But I'm just, they need to be able to recover whenever they get down like that, and they showed the ability to do that. And also Victorious Miller, yeah, like you said, he's going to be very important for this team, and if he can come off the bench like he has and provide a little bit of scoring again whenever Sears and Carter aren't firing. So that's what I thought about it.
Something to monitor moving forward in this game for this season is LSU's slow starts.
Yeah.
They got off to a really poor start in the game against Alabama State, got off to a very poor start obviously in this game against Central Florida. They have gotten off to some
Charleston Southern.
Yeah, Charleston Southern was a bad one as well. They've gotten off to some shaky starts. They obviously played great right out of the chute against Kansas State, so it's not like it's every single game, but it's starting to develop a little bit of a trend. They played pretty well to start the game on Friday. They went to the half in good shape and then got away from there in the second half against Pitt. But they're going to have to come out and play a little bit better early in games, because you can't count on scrapping your way back from double-figure deficits every single game like LSU has been doing to this point. So a nice job from LSU in this game. You mentioned Reed in the 21 points, 7 of 8 from the foul line for Reed, which was very good. It's not the most beautiful stroke you've ever seen, but you can cash in 7 of 8. That's a good day at the office there. So solid work for LSU at the Greenbrier. They play again against Northwestern State coming up on Friday. So if you're coming down to watch LSU and Oklahoma on Saturday and you get in a night early, go see the basketball team play on Friday against Northwestern State. Tip-off for that game will be at 7 o'clock. I do want to remind y'all, a lot of you out there listened to Hoops with Hunt back in the day, launched that during the Will Wade 08 era and was posting that daily. We have brought that back in essence. It's not going to be the same as it was. It's just going to be the basketball segments from this show. Every time I talk basketball on this show, Beck's going to clip it and throw it into the Hoops with Hunt feed. So it's the same place it was back in the day. That RSS feed is still there. It's still everywhere you find your podcast. So if you want basketball talk and you don't want to try to scroll through our show every day to find it, you can go to Hoops with Hunt the same as you always did and check it out right there wherever you find your podcast. So this segment we just did be clipped and put right there on the Hoops with Hunt feed in the coming hours. So check that out each and every day if you would. Hoops with Hunt is what you can search on your podcast apps. All right, we'll switch back to football transition. We'll hear some sound from Brian Kelly post-game and kind of get some more thoughts on LSU and Vanderbilt. Still got to talk about the SEC games of the weekend and how my picks did. Certainly got to talk about Jaden Daniels' kicker. We got to talk about the rest of college football Saturday and what comes this weekend on Rivalry Weekend with Denton Day. We'll do that an hour from right now. So don't go anywhere. It's a Monday edition of The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. When you think luxury, think Genesis of Baton Rouge. You don't see a ton of Genesis on the road. They're fairly new to the game, and the location, Airline and PQ, only been there a little over a year. But if you're in the market for a new vehicle, you should check out Genesis. Just put it on your list. You're going to be on Airline Highway anyway because all the dealerships are over there. Just make one pop in, Airline and PQ, across from Women's Hospital, and check out the folks at Genesis of Baton Rouge. Every car that's on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com, so you can start your journey there. There are so many wonderful features that are offered to you when you become a Genesis driver. You get a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. 10 years, 100,000 miles. How about 3 years of complimentary maintenance? And it's valet. They'll come get your car and perform the maintenance and bring it back to you. And they'll get you in a Genesis for the time in between. It's fantastic customer service. It's a fantastic experience driving a Genesis. Go try one. Check out one of their brand ambassadors. They'll walk you to the car. They'll get you in behind the wheel, and you can get there and test drive. Genesis of Baton Rouge, it's fantastic, fantastic line of vehicles, and every single one of them comes with fantastic safety features. The entire line was given the IIHA top safety pick. Some of them were top safety picks plus. Get on by Airline and PQ. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Monday shows brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. All your printing, scanning, copying needs, Gulf Coast Office Products, GCOPnet.com, GCOPnet.com. You never given a ton of thought to why you have a specific copier, printer, scanner? Maybe you should. That's what the folks at Gulf Coast Office Products are here to do. Trey Beal and his team have different clients in every vertical market you can think of, whether you're in healthcare, banking, law, media company like us, education, whatever the case may be. They know what the needs are, and they have the resources that are available to fill them. So give them a call or check them out online, GCOPnet.com. They're statewide, certainly have a wonderful team here in Baton Rouge that Trey Beal heads up. Give him a call. You will not regret it. It's Gulf Coast Office Products, GCOPnet.com. I wrote my column after the game on Saturday on Josh Williams and about kind of his journey. And you're all very familiar with Josh Williams' story. We rehashed it when he came back for his sixth year, when he put on the number 18. But I still think it was worth writing that story because he's so counter to what this era of college sports has become, where folks are going places solely for the money and where folks are jumping from this program to this program. And if you don't immediately get a starting job, you bail. And then if you do get a starting job and then someone else comes in, you bail. And Josh Williams has just never been about any of that kind of stuff. He's a guy that just wants to play for LSU, and whatever that role is, he wants to fill it. And I thought that Saturday night he was fantastic. Brian Kelly spoke after the game about his sixth-year senior running back.
He ran through the face of a number of defenders. It was physicality. It was want to. It was desire. It was all those things in one. It was just a guy that was, committed to no matter what, the first guy's not going to bring me down. And he set a tone for our entire team, a toughness on offense and a resolve that these guys showed this week. And I think he was one of our leaders this week, spoke up many times. He spoke up before our our meal today when we meet with our team, he really was committed to making sure that we found a way to win this game.
I completely agree with Brian Kelly in that just Josh Williams set the tone, because the tone had kind of been set by Vanderbilt. They got LSU off the field in the 3 and out, and then they hit a big 63-yard touchdown pass in the first play of the game. And at that point, you've got a disgruntled stadium. You've got a team that's in a funk. They've been down for a month. You've got the Bryce Underwood cloud. I mean, it's just everything was bad. And they dump him off a 16-yard pass that he breaks 2 tackles on, and then he busts up the right side for a 20-yard touchdown and kind of set the tone and reestablished LSU's footing in the game. And it was physical, and he did run tough. He ran tough the entire game. Even the second touchdown, he was running through tacklers into the end zone. And yeah, I do agree that Josh Williams very much set the tone. He was part of the guys that called that players-only meeting back a week from today, back on Monday. It was him and Greg Penn and Will Campbell, and they were the guys that stepped up and talked to the team saying, hey, we still got 2 games to play for. We got to get these 8 wins. And I thought he walked that walk after talking the talk with his effort in the game on Saturday. Kelly then was asked, was this kind of a statement game from Josh Williams?
Absolutely, and he said that. He goes, this is what we expect here at LSU. This is what I expect. And everybody did. I mean, he was echoing the feelings of the entire team, but he could do it from a position of experience. He could do it from a position where he's been down this road before and was able to lend that to everybody else in the program. And I think it really affected some of the younger players in a positive way. We saw some things from our younger players this week that we hadn't seen, maturity from them. And he set the table early on, and then he backed it up tonight, and that's what you love to see.
When I think about Josh Williams' journey, and I think about the guy who, in an era where everyone's holding their hand out to get money to go somewhere, Josh Williams had scholarship offers and decided to turn those down, and he paid money to come play for LSU because he wasn't on scholarship. He's paying tuition to come play at LSU. Like in the NIL era, it's usually the other way around. No, he said, I'm going to go play at LSU. And he earned a scholarship after 1 year on the scout team. And then he becomes LSU's leading rusher in 2022. He led LSU running backs in yards in 2022. And then what happened in 2023? Well, they brought Logan Diggs in, and he became the number 1 back. How many guys who become a starter, become the team leader in rushing, and then have a guy come in and take your role, how many stick around after that? Not very many. And Josh Williams did. And then he came out, and this year, Caden Durham kind of became the lead back, and is a freshman. And you could have just pouted and said, all right, well, I'm done, which players will do, and opt out. Well, no, that's not what he did. He just showed up and became a team leader and wore number 18, and then they called on him in this game, and he changed the tone and tenor of the game with his physical runs. He also did a great job of catching the football, and Brian Kelly was asked about getting Josh Williams and the running backs a little bit more involved there in the passing game.
Well, we were running a lot of 4 vertical, and they were carrying those inside seams with their linebackers. So the linebackers were running with those inside seams, which created a big disparity between the depth of the linebacker that was trying to get into the seam route and our check down. So we said, look, if they carry the seams, just check it down. We're going to get 12 to 15 yards, and we might have averaged that on our check downs tonight.
I thought Gary Nussmeier did a great job of checking the ball down to both backs. I mentioned that at the top of the show, and that's something that he needs to do. That keeps LSU in a rhythm and moving the ball offensively, and LSU stayed in that rhythm really all night. LSU absolutely controlled time of possession when you consider the opponent. Vanderbilt was as good as any team in the SEC at time of possession. That's one of the punches they can use to try to beat you, and LSU had the ball for 34 minutes in this game. Vanderbilt only had it for about 26 minutes. And you consider that LSU did that because they were 8 of 13 on third down, and a lot of that was due to Josh Williams, his running and his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield as well. It was just really, really good stuff from LSU's offense and from Josh Williams. And maybe he goes nuts in this game on Saturday and Senior Day. Maybe Josh Williams has 180 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game coming up on Saturday. But maybe this is kind of the last time that he spearheads the LSU offense inside Tiger Stadium. And it was really cool, I thought, for him to have a couple of moments like that and to be recognized by his coach like that after a game like that, because his story is a good one. There just aren't going to be very many like this moving forward. One, not a lot of guys are going to be able to hang around for 6 years because of COVID years moving forward. And two, you just don't have a lot of walk-ons, turn starters, turn second-teamers, turn number 18s in their sixth year in this era. It's kind of a unicorn at this point. And so I just thought it was really nice that Brian Kelly mentioned him, and I just thought it was relevant to enough to write my column on it after the game. I thought he was fantastic in the game on Saturday night. Josh Williams, final stat line in the game, he goes for 90 yards on the ground. He also reeled in was it 4 catches for 61 yards, and totally had 151 total yards and 2 touchdowns in the game. Just a great effort for number 18, Josh Williams, in the game on Saturday night. All right, we'll come back and we'll close out hour number 1. It's a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Boudreaux's Electrical Services. Neil and Melissa have been running the shop for 40 years. Her son Justin now kind of taking the reins as the sales manager over at Boudreaux's Electrical. If you need a Generac home standby generator, this is the number you need to call. 985-397-1562. 985-397-1562. And if you hear that 985 and go, wait, I'm in the 225, they're not going to be able to come. Yeah, they will. They can come to you. And they've also got a location in Gonzales. It's 225-300-9389. Now, you got a lot of folks that are going to have a lot of family members in for Christmas. If you want to make sure that you don't lose power with the entire family at the house, you need a Generac home standby generator. Power outages are inevitable in our part of the world. Hurricane season, winter storms, which got us last year, even those summer thunder showers that come through and they can just knock the power out for a couple of hours. It's just a complete nuisance. Avoid that with the Generac home standby generator from the folks at Boudreaux's Electrical Services. Give them a call, those 2 numbers I gave you earlier, or check them out online, boudreauxelectrical.com, boudreauxelectrical.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Yeah, LSU women's basketball team is down in the Bahamas right now. They fell behind significantly in the first quarter. They lost the first quarter 24-11. I'm not a mathematician, but I know that 24 times 4 is 96. They're on pace to give up 96 points. I'm imagining that didn't make Kim Mulkey super happy. They fought back and got it to within 10 at halftime. It was 26-36 at halftime. They play on in the third quarter now down there against Washington in the Bahamas, so we'll keep you updated on that score. But the Huskies putting it on LSU a little bit early down there in Nassau. Also a housekeeping issue because of the Thanksgiving week. The Brian Kelly show is going to be tonight from TJ Ribs, Chris Blair and Brian Kelly, 7 o'clock right there on Acadian Thruway. So if you want to stop on by or check it out on Eagle 98.1, you can certainly do that. Usually on Thursdays. Thursday's the holiday this week. So tonight, the final edition of the Brian Kelly show in this regular season will be from TJ Ribs. Saw this and wanted to kind of cover it here at the end of the first hour. ESPN's president of content, Burke Magnus, was on the SI Media with Jimmy Traina podcast, and they addressed Lee Corso on game day moving forward. And Burke Magnus had this to say: listen, we're going to do what we've done now for a couple of years running, which is we're going to have a conversation with him after the season and see where things are. He's a special guy. He's one of the nicest men you'll ever meet. He's a great listener, and he's been absolutely iconic on the show. We're going to get through the playoff this year, let everyone decompress, and then we'll have some time to figure out what we're going to do for next season. It kind of felt like a couple weeks ago when they were in Bloomington that it was kind of a tribute to Lee Corso. Now, certainly he coached there, and it was the first time game day had been in Bloomington, and you knew that was going to be a great thing for Corso, but they brought out a lot of tributes to him, and it just kind of felt like that was close to the end. And I don't know if it is or not. Here's my thing. I see people, texting and tweeting, and you understand that when Corso had that stroke a few years ago, his speech was always noticeably slurred, and he's 89 years old, and at times the delivery is very, very poor. There's no question about that. But I hear people say he's tarnishing his legacy, or that I just think that's BS. Lee Corso can get on College Game Day as long as he wants to, in my estimation. He's always got a really, really reduced role in the show, and I understand that it's tough for him to get through some of those picks, but it just doesn't bother me. There's 3 decades of just iconic memories with Lee Corso, and the fact that his last 3 or 4 years are different from that doesn't mean anything to me. If he wants to still come on in the last segment and put a Brutus the Buckeye head on or dress like a leprechaun, like, I'm going to be fine with it as long as he can still do it. And we all understand that he's certainly got more years in the rearview mirror than he does that he's looking forward to. But I'm perfectly fine with them trotting Lee Corso back out there. There's so few people that have truly been like the face of a sport and created a brand like that. And Vital and Lee Corso are 2 guys that have done that. And the memories are so good, and the headgear is so famous, and we can't kick off the day of football until he does that. And so I realize that McAfee's kind of taken the mascot role, if you will, and I realize that it's tough for Corso to get some words out, but like, that just doesn't change the last 30 years for me, that the last 3 have been difficult. Like, I don't care, Beck. I mean, where are you on that situation?
Yeah, I'm with you. For me, it's different. Like, if you're comparing Lee Corso and Dick Vitale. To me, Dick Vitale when you're calling a game, it's important to be able to keep up and all that.
No doubt.
So to me, that is a bit much in terms of like the fact that he was still calling games for so long and he was just struggling. With Lee, it's like, they're going to feed him lines. They're going to feed him all the stats and everything.
Kirk helps him out.
Yeah, Kirk helps him out. But that's fine. Like, it's an entertainment product, and I'm sure he still loves doing it. So I don't have a problem with it.
I thought it was absurd, quite frankly, when Joe Paterno was on the sideline with no headset on.
Yeah.
Or he's coaching from up in the press box. Like, I thought that was ridiculous. Like, but he's the coach of the team. This is a guy who's sitting there on an inconsequential television show. And to be frank, like, game day is a great product. I love it. I like McAfee. I like the field goal stuff. I'm good with the breakdowns. I think Saban does a wonderful job. I love the fact that they can go to campuses and you can kind of, like, I loved when they were in Boone, North Carolina last year. It was such a great showcase of, like, I don't know anything about Boone, North Carolina, but they were there and it was just so beautiful, and like the people were fired up to be there. But the fact of the matter is, like, game day is more of like a routine thing to me than like I'm just fiending for the information that they're going to give me. Like, it's purely like an entertainment type deal, and Corso's only on it for like 8% of the show. He comes in for the first segment, a couple, and then maybe one in the middle of the show, and then they bring him on for picks so he can tell the one guest, "Not so fast, my friend," and use the pen and then put the headgear on. Like, it doesn't, in my estimation, completely hamper the show.
No.
And the show is not that big a deal. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's just part of the routine. While I'm scrambling eggs in the morning and everybody's waking up and they're playing with Myers in the living room, like, I just have game day on. Oh, where are they today? Oh, they're in Chapel Hill. Like, whatever. Like, and so, if he was on for the entire 3 hours and couldn't get a sentence out, like, okay, we could have a conversation. The fact that it's that he's just not. And then the thing that I'm pushing back in is just like, don't tell me that like his legacy is hampered because the last like 3 years have been tough. Like, I don't think ESPN's going to tell him you have to stop. They've already obviously very much reduced his role. He already misses some shows because of travel. They went out west earlier this year, and he didn't make that trip because of his health. It is what it is. It was really tough when they tried to do the COVID shows and he was in the backyard and couldn't hear anybody. Like, that was really tough. But as long as he can be there and Kurt can kind of help him and guide him through, and he can make the picks and read the 5 stats off, like, I think that's just fine for me. And so maybe this is his last year, and if it is, I hope that they do something really, really special for him, because that's going to be something that you'll remember forever. It's just the fact that he created this iconic brand just out of his energy and passion and love for the sport. And that doesn't go away because he has trouble getting some words out here and there. So just wanted to kind of chat about that. I saw it come up on my Twitter feed and wanted to discuss that briefly. I'm trying to check for the continuing basketball scores, but I think they forgot to put the score in their latest graphic on Twitter. I'm following along on Twitter for the women's basketball score.
They are down 4 right now, heading into the 4th.
Okay. Oh, there it is. There's the graphic. Okay, so they're chipping away. I mean, it was bad. They were down 13 after a quarter, and now they've chipped it away to 4. So for the second consecutive day, an LSU basketball team gets off to a brutal start, and now they're finding their way through it. And I think some of these things are good for LSU, both on men's and women's. The women have not played a very challenging opening schedule. Kim Mulkey's been very open about that. She talked about it with me on the pregame show a couple of weeks ago when she was on for the Alabama game. She's like, yeah, look, we haven't played a very difficult schedule. We're trying to figure out kind of what we are, and this is a good opportunity, I think, against a good Washington team. We'll see if they can close it out down 4 as they go into the fourth quarter from the Bahamas. I'm not sure if you can watch that game. I think you can stream it. You can. It's on Flow Sports, so you can stream it. If you check out the LSU women's basketball Twitter feed, you can see the link to it right there online, so y'all can check that out. If you missed any of the first hour of our show, you can always check that out on demand. We've got anywhere you find your podcast, you can find us, whether that's Spotify, Google, Apple Podcast, wherever. You can certainly find it on our website as well, 1045ESPN.com. Every show from Off the Bench, Live at Lunch, Hunt Palmer Show, as well as After Further Review, are always cataloged there in their entirety. If you're just looking for little snippets and segments here, you can find them in a multitude of ways. You can find us all our Saints content at Hunt on Saints, all of our LSU content football-wise on Hunt on LSU, and as I mentioned earlier in the hour, if you want basketball content for LSU men's basketball, you can always find that at Hoops with Hunt, the old podcast, and we brought it back. It's just the segments from this show that we repurposed in that way, so you can search with Hoop with Hunt. Subscribe to that, and you can get our basketball content each and every day. Open the show talking about LSU and Vanderbilt and how LSU performed on Saturday. I thought it was a really, really good performance from the Tigers. Kind of went over all that went into that. Talked about LSU's basketball comeback yesterday at the Greenbrier for a triple overtime win. And then some thoughts on Josh Williams and just how good he and the LSU running backs were on Saturday at 1:30. You can catch all that on demand wherever you find your sound. I'm fired up for hour number 2 as well. Denton Day is going to be with us at the bottom of hour number 2. Denton does a great job with Sirius XM. He's the host of College Football Overtime after all the games go final. Does a great job there of covering national college football stories. So we chat with him about things kind of outside of our little Baton Rouge bubble every single Monday. We'll do that at 2:30. And he's also a big Washington Commanders fan, and they just absolutely gave one away yesterday because their kicker couldn't make a freaking extra point. He missed 2 of them, and they end up coming up a point short, and then Dallas tacks on a late touchdown there. But we'll talk a little bit about that with Denton. When we come back, my SEC picks from Friday. We're getting to crunch time. We were exactly 500 going into the week. How did things emerge? Becca will let us know. We'll talk some SEC football after Sports Center. You're listening to a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show presented by Gulf Coast Office Products.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Our tub gets used every single night. Myers Man bath time somewhere around 6:45. We try to get him into the tub. If you don't do that and you don't ever use your tub, this kind of old, dingy, you just stand in it because it's a shower. Well, take it out. Put in a gorgeous glass walk-in shower. Completely transform the look and the functionality of that bathroom. Add a little value to your home. You can do that with David Duvall and his team at One Bath and Closets. Those tub-to-shower conversions are quick. They're painless. And if you're a little concerned about the price tag, well, they got financing options. 18 months, 0%. So don't let that deter you. Go get that done today. Start that process at onebathandclosets.com. Get your free consultation. David can tell you what they can do for you. Check them out online. It's onebathandclosets.com. You can get the consultation. You can check out the reviews from their satisfied customers and see pictures of their great work. It's One Bath and Closets. Check them out. onebathandclosets.com.